And welcome back. In this video, we're going to look at adding error pages. If we run our app and we go back to Chrome, we can refresh and see that this still works. But if we change this to post number 1, for example, it does not. It just sort of breaks and nothing really happens. What we're seeing here is that there is no content to be put in here in the template. So instead of, getting a page that says we can't find this post, what we're getting is nothing. This is not great. So let's stop our app. Remember to stop your app every time and hide this away. And what we're going to do is, if we can't find the post in our database, which is our dictionary here, we're going to return a different template, which is going to be an error page or a not found page. So again, we're going to extract this back to a variable, just because we need to use it in multiple places now. We're going to say post is that. And if not post, remember post will be none if it's not found, because the get method returns none if it wasn't found in the dictionary. So post will evaluate to true if it is something, and to false if it is none. Not false will be true. So then we will run this if statement. So if the post was not found, we will run the if statement. Just going to write a wee comment here to make this a bit clearer. Post will be none if not found. Not none evaluates to true, because none evaluates to false. And as you know, an if statement only runs when the condition here is true. So if this was not found, we want to run return render template. And we're going to do a 404.html page. And then we're going to pass it in a message to say something like, a post with ID, post ID, was not found. Okay. And of course down here, post is going to be equal to post, which is what we created up here. Notice that there is a gray squiggly line. That's because the variable has the same name as the function. Not a great convention. This is my bad. I don't recommend naming the function and the variables the same way, but it's normally fine. It's only not fine if you want to call this function from within your code, which would be a bit of a strange thing to do. So this is okay. Maybe not the best idea. Python doesn't like it very much, but it still works. So what we got here is, if the post was not found, we're going to return this other template. And we're going to give it this variable that the template can use. So let's go into our templates and create a new HTML file, which we're going to call 404.html. Notice how when you create a new HTML file, this is already all pre-filled for you. So you can keep some of this, like at the title of the page and so forth, or you can just delete it. And we're going to add in our body here what we want the page to return. It's going to be h1. And we're going to say 404 post not found. And then inside a p tag, we're going to put our message. Our message, remember, is the variable we passed in that is going to get replaced by a post with ID, post ID was not found. So make sure that you've stopped running your app earlier. We can run it again. Go back to Chrome, refresh this page that didn't return anything before. And now you can see we get a nice 404 post not found, and then it says a post with ID 1 was not found. If we go back to post 0, we get our post contents. So this is great. We're now dealing with user input in a very nice way. If we couldn't do what they needed, we can return a message that is appropriate, as opposed to nothing, or potentially an error message. Again, remember to stop your app and minimize that. And now we're going to look at a couple improvements to this multi-template. As you can see, both our pages, 404 and post, have essentially the same structure. They've got this doc type, they've got this HTML, an empty head, a body, and the only difference between the two, other than the indentation, is this. The post has this h1 and this p tag with this post title and content, and the 404 has an h1 and a p tag with a different message entirely. Jinja2, which is the engine that's driving this templating, does have support for, this sort of inheritance. So we can make a base template that will contain all of this, body and HTML, and then we can make these two child templates that only include this content here. That way we'll have a bit less duplicated content. Let's go ahead, right-click our templates, and create a new file. I'm going to call this file base.jinja2. Now the reason I'm going for Jinja2 and not HTML here is because in some editors, not in PyCharm Community Edition, but in some editors, you'll get a bit better syntax highlighting if you use .jinja2. If you are using PyCharm Community Edition, I advise you stick with .html, just because you're going to get slightly nicer highlighting. If you're using other editors, I recommend you use .jinja2 and you install any packages you need in order to get the syntax highlighting to work. Okay? In this editor, you're not going to see syntax highlighting, but this is the best thing to do if you're using a different editor that does support that. Optionally, if you're using PyCharm Professional Edition, which is not free, you'll also get nice syntax highlighting with this. So as part of this, creating this superclass, per se, super template, we're going to be changing over to Jinja2. The first thing we want to do is to say, what is in a base template? Well, in a base template, you've got essentially all of this. But you don't want the content. You want this content, this h1 tag and the p tags, to come from the children. So instead, in Jinja2, now we can use this syntax to say block content. And down here, end block. As you can see, there is a opening curly brace and a percent symbol. Then we've got block content and a percent symbol and a closing brace. Then we've got, some content in here if we want. And at the end, we've got this end block set of tags. You can put any content you want here. But more interestingly, you can copy this and put it into 404.html. Now, the 404.html tag can have its content here, and it will be replaced for this stuff in base.jinja2. So I'm going to undo that and just put it up here, just so I can then copy this, put it in there and get rid of that. As you can see, 404.html now looks much simpler. And if we go over to post.html, we can do the same. So we can go and copy this, paste it in here, copy this, paste it in here, make sure to fix the indentation. Now post.html also looks a bit simpler. These pages are just children of base.jinja2. They don't need all the duplicate code for the HTML and, head tags, body tags, because the content here will be injected into this block that we've defined at base.jinja2. Of course, the million-dollar question is, how do they know they are children of that? We've not said it anywhere. Indeed, we have to say that. So we'll say extends base.jinja2. We'll copy that and put it in post as well. Make sure to not forget that. Now these children are actually extending base.jinja2. When we render this template using Flask, the first thing it'll do, is it'll go and extend Jinja2. So all the scaffolding from base.jinja2 is going to be applied to this template, and this block of content is going to replace this block of content here. So we're going to get a nice HTML file without the bloat and the duplication. So that's good. As part of this, again, we're going to migrate to .jinja2 just to make it clear that these templates are Jinja2 templates and not HTML only templates. So I'm going to rename these by right-clicking them, go to refactor and rename, and change that to Jinja2. We're going to lose the syntax highlighting, which is not great in this editor. So again, if you are using PyCharm Community Edition like I am, don't do this. Stick to HTML. It may be slightly easier. You won't get syntax highlighting for Jinja, but you will get syntax highlighting for HTML. If you're using a different editor though, feel free to move over to Jinja2 and install whatever it is you need to install to get the syntax highlighting. It's up to you. It doesn't really matter to Python at all. Now, instead of HTML here in these templates, make sure to use .jinja2. Just because the names have to be correct. Doesn't matter what it is at the end, but it has to be correct. Now that we've got this, we can press play and make sure that this is all working by going to Chrome and refreshing. This seems to be fine. Going to a different post. This seems to be fine still. So all our changes here are working. Remember to stop your app, minimize that, and we can do a short review of what we just looked at. All that we've done is added this error page. So if the post was not found and we're returning a different template entirely, and we're passing it this short message. Now, we've also created a base Jinja file, which is all the HTML scaffolding plus this special block syntax. In any child that extends that file, we then have this block again, and we can include any HTML we want inside that block, and it will replace the contents in base.jinja2. Make sure to spell these blocks correctly, block should be lowercase b, you should have these tags opening and at the end. Some of my students insist on typing block with a capital B. That won't work. It has to be lowercase b. This here, though, the content block, is essentially a name, so you can call it whatever you want. You can put whatever you want inside content. You can call it something else if that makes more sense to you. You could call it block body, for example, if that makes more sense to you. And that's it. That simplifies our code greatly and allows us to give the users this nice error message. That's it for this video, and I'll see you on the next one.